anybody know who this is? Come on, who is this? Okay, this is Ben Shapiro. Now, okay, raise your hand if you are familiar with Ben Shapiro. Okay, now what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to talk a lot about the content of what Ben Shapiro says, because that's going to get us distracted. Actually, I think he's hilarious. I listen to him or watch him pretty often. He's fantastic. He's known as a very good debater. He is a professional political commentator. Okay, he's also an Orthodox Jew. Here's another picture of him. You can see he's wearing his yarmulke. He wears it all the time. So he's known, if you look up Ben Shapiro, you're going to find lots of stuff for him, lots of stuff against him. You're also going to find lots of clips on the internet that are Ben Shapiro destroys clips, right? Ben Shapiro destroys this person who has this view. And what that means is he's in a debate in some public setting. He goes around to universities a lot and does a lot of public speaking. And he'll take questions from the crowd. And someone will ask him a question, and he will debate them and destroy them, right? So that's what he's well known for. But what I'm going to bring as the illustration today, well, okay, I'll say just a few things about Ben Shapiro. He was a really smart kid, okay? He actually is he's a little bit younger than me. He's actually not about my age. He's a little bit younger than me. And he is really, really famous if you don't know him. He skipped 2 grades. He skipped grade 3 and grade 9. And he was also the youngest, in the United States, the youngest nationally syndicated columnist, so writing columns about politics. At the age of 17, he was a nationally syndicated columnist. He graduated summa cum laude from undergrad and then cum laude from Harvard Law, which is, I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? And he's a great debater and super famous. So that's some stuff you need to know about him. This stuff is just for fun. Here's a few quotes from him that are they're not super full of content, and they're not things most people would disagree with, so just kind of funny. This one's great. Distrust of government isn't baseless cynicism, it's realism. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Here's another one. I've never seen anyone's life get better by complaining about reality. I've seen it get better by accepting reality as it is and then making personal decisions to make it better. That's a good quote, huh? That's a very biblical quote, actually. And as an Orthodox Jew, he believes the entire Old Testament. He disagrees with us about Jesus, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And this one is great. Facts don't care about your feelings. I don't want that to be true. Well, that doesn't do anything because you're not God. You're not God. Okay, so that's great. But the illustration is not about all the stuff Ben Shapiro says. I'm going to play you a video of Ben Shapiro at the age of 12, okay? Because today we are going to look at a story about Jesus when Jesus was 12, okay? Jesus was a 12-year-old Jew who was super smart and super impressive. Ben Shapiro was also once a 12-year-old Jew who was super smart and super impressive. That doesn't mean Ben Shapiro is just like Jesus, okay? That's not what I'm saying. He's not. But this is going to give us help us imagine what it was like to see Jesus in this story that we're going to read a little bit later. So this clip I'm going to play for you, it's old school. It's from 1996. It's Ben Shapiro playing violin at some big fancy banquet for like Israel, raising funds for Israel. And he's introduced by Larry King in this clip. Okay, so check this out. Can you give me that video clip? There we go.
Benjamin Shapiro is 12 years old. He'll be accompanied by his father, David. He began training on the violin at age 5. In addition to the violin, he plays chess, loves baseball, completes in track and field. His goal is to become the first Orthodox rabbi to sit on the Supreme Court. Meaning of court will have to close at 3 o'clock on Friday. Also, he wants to be the first to give a concert at Carnegie Hall. However, before all of this, he has to be bar mitzvahed. He will play for us the theme from Schindler's List. Ladies and gentlemen, Benjamin Shapiro.
All right, that's it. Okay, that's it. So give it up for Ben Shapiro when he was 12. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Okay, So look how young he looked, right? He looks like he's 12 in that, but he looks like he's about 8, I think. He looks very young. He still looks young for his age, right? And so I think that's just a powerful image right there, and we'll come back to that as our illustration to grab onto some things that we can see about Jesus today, okay? All right, so we're in this series right now. This series, we just started it last week. It's called Amazed, Collections from Luke to Last Week. What does that mean? Okay, what it means is, so Luke was a companion of the Apostle Paul. He was not an eyewitness. He wasn't there when Jesus was walking around on earth. But he was around just after that, and he went and interviewed tons of people who had been there when Jesus was doing his miracles, when Jesus was teaching, and he compiled all of these things into a powerful book, the book in the New Testament known as the book of Luke. Okay, and so one of the themes in this book is the word amazed. And over again in this book, as he records these stories from people who were talking about what it was like to be around Jesus, they would say, it was amazing. It was amazing. I don't know how to describe what it was like to be around him. Okay, so what we're doing in this series is we are going through these stories and we are seeking to see what they saw so that we can also be amazed at Jesus. But we are also, the last week part is that we are collecting stories of what Jesus is doing now. Since the time when he was walking around on earth, what has he been doing over these last 2,000 years? Because what Luke says, okay, Luke knew a secret that is hidden in plain sight, that Jesus is still at work. He's at work in our lives. So today, we're not going to read the whole thing out, but you have one story that was submitted last week that was handed out to everybody when they came in. That story is from Shawnee Diaz. So give her a round of applause for submitting a God story. That's awesome. If you don't know who she is yet, say hi to her and meet her after church. And check that out. It's going to inspire you. So we're collecting stories. And there's sort of a theme each week. So this week, the theme for the stories is children. What did God do when we were children? Okay? Now, we're going to go into this story in Luke, Amazed by a Child, and we're going to read it. It's not very long, but it is unique. It is a very, we started a Bible study this morning in my office. It's 8:30 if you want to come. There's a plug for that. So much fun. We're going in deep into some of these stories in Luke. And one of the things I was saying in this Bible study is that Luke, and really the whole New Testament, it is so different from everything else that was written in those days. Everything else that was written in those days is the great deeds of great men, the life of Julius Caesar and how he is a god and conquered the world. That's the kind of thing that was put into a book in the first century. Not little anecdotes about a 12-year-old kid visiting a temple. But the Bible is totally different than everything else that was written. I have been trying to imagine, both during this series and I've been trying to imagine this for a long time, what it must have been like to read the Bible in those days when there was nothing else like this. There was nothing else like this, stories that are so personal. What you're going to see in this story, it's a very personal story. Okay, so we're going to read it, and then we'll start talking about it. The first point, we'll read the first section of it. The first point is the smartest kid in Judea. Okay, so here's how it begins. Luke 2, 41 to 47. And as we read this, you can ask yourself the question, who was Luke interviewing to get this story? Wonder who he interviewed. Every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. Okay, so they lived, where did they live, Jesus and his family? They lived in Galilee, specifically the little tiny village of Nazareth, which was not famous at the time at all. It's famous because Jesus is now the most famous person who's ever lived. So they would travel there. They traveled to Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. When he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to custom. So this was not some special thing. It was just what they did every year. They went to Jerusalem for the festival of Passover. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus ditched them and stayed behind in Jerusalem. And they were unaware of it. All right, now for us today, this is maybe the part that's most shocking about this story, is that his parents leave Jerusalem. I mean, he's 12, he's not 5, okay? Jesus is 12 at this point, but they leave Jerusalem and they don't notice that Jesus is not with them. We're going to see why they don't notice. There's a number of reasons. They don't notice for kind of a long time. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. A whole day. I mean, how? Now, it's not as far. The distance isn't as great as it would be for us. But, for us today, where would you be if you traveled for a whole day? You'd be like in Alaska or in Alberta They traveled on for a whole day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. So they're traveling in a caravan. So this is part of the reason why they don't notice, right? Is there's a whole bunch of family members. This is their friends. This is the people who live in their village with them. This is all kinds of relatives, cousins, aunts, uncles. So they just assume Jesus is with somebody else. Does anybody have a family like that? I don't really. That'd be amazing if you lived around your family like that and there were so many people. I would really love that. Maybe most of us experience this like at a family reunion or something like that, a wedding or even a memorial if our family is like that and there's enough crossover. Okay, so you're seeing images into what life was like for Jesus growing up. That's what you're seeing here. Okay, so they began looking. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him, which took a long time, right? They're in Alberta. They had to come all the way back to BC to look for Jesus because he's wandering around downtown Vancouver. Hopefully he's not in the downtown east side. After 3 days, they don't know where their 12-year-old is for 3 days, okay? Somebody call Child Protective Services. They found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And this is apparently where he's been for 3 days. The temple doesn't close. I guess he's just sleeping in the temple. I don't really know. Or maybe he knows somebody. But Jesus, even here, what kind of faith does that take for a 12-year-old? Just God's going to provide whatever I need. I'm going to be cool. Has any young person ever been stuck somewhere, stranded somewhere away from your parents, like in an airport or something? I mean, Jesus isn't afraid at all in this moment. It doesn't seem like. And what is he doing? He's sitting among the teachers. So what are the teachers? These are Levites. These are sort of the priestly class of the Jewish people. And these are very well-educated people. So these are people who have spent their whole lives studying the Bible. And what they're doing is basically like we did this morning before church. They are sitting around in the temple courts having a Bible study. And it's sort of discussion-based. The teachers are teaching things out of the Bible, but then they're asking questions. People are asking them questions. This is sort of a dynamic thing. This is what they did. And anybody could just come, there's that teacher sitting over there. This teacher sitting, I like him better than that guy. That guy's boring. So let's go over there to that Jewish teacher. And this is what Jesus does, is he just walks around and he's hanging out with all these teachers. Now, everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. Now, in a few minutes, I'll give you sort of a second or alternative translation to a number of verses in this section. But I just want to tell you here to begin with, this word is not nearly strong enough. The word amazed that is used here is the same word. Its most common translation in New Testament Greek is losing your mind. Everyone who heard him was losing their mind at his understanding of the Bible and his answers. They were shocked by the way that he was acting. So, I wish we could see. I would give a lot. That'd be an exaggeration to say I would give anything. But I'd give a lot to know what kinds of things was he asking them. How did they respond, and what kind of answers was Jesus giving when he was 12? So bring back that picture. I'm not equating morally or in terms of faith Ben Shapiro and Jesus in any way, but bring back that picture. Ben Shapiro was pretty impressive at the age of 12, wasn't he? He was clearly he was very, very smart. He had been training on violin since he was 5 years old. He was planning, 12 years old, he's got this plan to become a Supreme Court justice. He's failed so far in his plan. I don't know if that's still his plan or not. Probably that's never going to happen. But he was very impressive at that age. You could see in that clip, even Larry King was impressed by this kid, right? This kid is really impressive. This is the kind of feel that Jesus had just walking into the temple, without an introduction from Larry King. Just on his own merits, he just wanders into a class and starts asking questions. I'm going to fast forward us here in the Gospel of Luke just a little bit, because like Ben Shapiro became later, now is a very powerful debater. You would not want to go up against Ben Shapiro in an argument publicly unless you were very well prepared, and even then you're probably going to get destroyed, right? I mean, he would destroy me in an argument. That's just a fact. Jesus is the same way. You did not, later on as an adult, you did not want to go up against Jesus in a public debate. That was a foolish move. And Luke has a whole section in his gospel that's basically dedicated to demonstrating that. Okay? So this is just a picture, an image of, this is a famous painting of Jesus with the teachers in the temple. This painting, I think, is in a storeroom of a museum in Germany right now. Heinrich Hoffmann. But here is Luke chapter 20. Okay? So in Luke chapter 20, I won't read you all the stories. The one that comes right before this, you already know. And it's the one about paying taxes to Caesar. You guys know that story? I can remember thinking many times, even when I heard this story, I think I must have heard it as a kid, even though I didn't grow up in church. I wished I could be that quick and respond the way that Jesus responded to things. These teachers of the law, at this point, he's an adult, right? So he's in the temple, and they're trying to trap him, right? And they know that he cannot say, they're going to trap him with a question about paying taxes to the Roman government. And they know that he can't say, Caesar is the king, we should pay taxes to Caesar. Because if he says that, he's denying things that all the Jewish people believe, and that things that the Bible says only God is the only king. But they also know that if he says we should not pay taxes to Caesar, then the Romans are going to come arrest him and kill him. So they come up with a trap for him, right? And they walk up to him, and you can imagine these Pharisees, they are so excited about this trap that they're about to spring on Jesus, right? This is not the one we're going to read. They're so excited. So, great teacher, they say, should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? We know that you don't care about what anybody thinks other than God. We know that you're not afraid of Rome. We know that you are brave enough because you have this great faith to say that we shouldn't pay taxes to Rome. What should we do? And they think they've got him trapped. And what does Jesus do in that moment? It's stunning. Pull out a coin. Give me a loonie, he says. It's a denarius, right? It's their main coin. Pull it out. Whose picture is on it? Oh, Caesar's picture. Give Caesar what belongs to him, and give God what belongs to him. And the whole crowd is stunned. Imagine that moment. No one has ever heard. We've heard this over and over and over again. Imagine that moment when everybody thinks Jesus is trapped. Oh no. And he just annihilates the people who are trying to trap him. They go away with their tail tucked. I can imagine them whimpering or running off behind the column of the temple to cry. Like he just destroys them in front of a crowd of thousands of people. And then the other group, the Sadducees, this is this next section. So Luke has 1, 2, 3 of these, actually. We're skipping one. The Sadducees, this other group who don't believe, they don't believe that miracles are real. They don't believe a bunch of stuff about the Old Testament. They come up with a trap for him. They know that anybody who believes the Old Testament, Jesus believes there's going to be a resurrection at the end. And they're like, okay, we've got this great, okay, here we go. So some of the Sadducees who say there's no resurrection, they came to Jesus with a question. Teacher, they said, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies and leaves a wife but no children, the man must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now, if somebody comes to you with a question, you're teaching publicly, and they start their question by saying a whole bunch of facts, you know they're trying to trap you. They're setting up their question, okay? They're coming up with some way to prove that there's no resurrection from the dead, that that's impossible based on what the Bible says, okay? So Moses said that a man's brother dies, then, in order to continue the family line, his brother, if his brother's not married, he's got to marry him, okay, in order that, his line would not die out in Israel. Now, so they make up this story, okay? Now, there were 7 brothers. The first one married a woman and died with no kids. Okay, they've got all these little details in their story. The second one, the second did the same thing. And then the third married her, and the same way. So anyway, the point of the story is 7 people, 7 men are married to the same woman, and there are no kids from any of them. And so they think they've got Jesus trapped, okay? And so they say, okay, so here, finally the woman dies. Everybody's dead now, okay? Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife is she going to be? So we've just proved to you, Jesus, that there is no resurrection. You are trapped, man. So because this woman was married to 7 different men, so if everybody's going to rise from the dead, that makes no sense. How's she going to be married to all of them? That can't be. The 7 were married to her. And Jesus replies, actually, Luke kind of softens it. In Matthew, he replies and says, you are gravely in error because you don't know anything about the Bible and you don't believe God at all. This is kind of like Ben Shapiro sometimes when he says, he starts out something by calling somebody a not very nice name and then destroys them with his argument. Jesus says, you guys are gravely in error. You know nothing about the Bible and you know nothing about God. Okay, listen, the people of this age marry and are given in marriage. But those who are considered worthy of taking part in the future age, the age of the resurrection from the dead, will neither marry nor be given in marriage. There is no marriage after the resurrection. And they can no longer die, for they're like the angels. They are God's children, since they are children of the resurrection. But, and then he comes back to them with his own question. In the account of the burning bush, even Moses showed that the dead rise. For he calls the Lord the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. So Jesus comes back to them. He just annihilates their argument, throws it out, and immediately, with no preparation, comes back with a scripture that he's ready with. And he says, look, when Moses was at the burning bush, God spoke to him. He said, I am the God of Abraham. Abraham is dead. If he is the God of Abraham, that means Abraham must be alive. What's your answer, Sadducees? He says. Okay, we've gone on this long enough. The whole crowd is stunned. Well said, teacher. You just wrecked those guys. And no one else dared to ask him any more questions. Okay, so I'll just say this is a little bit. Now, of course, at this point, when he's 30 years old, he is a stronger debater probably than when he's 12. But this gives you a sense of what is happening and why people are losing their minds over this kid when he's in the temple. So the big point, one of the big points I want you to take away today is, I don't have it up here again, is what we're dealing with here. Jesus is the smartest kid in Judea. We often think of Jesus, we think of him just in terms of he is the Son of God, and he is. He is the eternal one, and he is. He is the one we should believe in, and he is. He is the one who's full of love and mercy, and he is. He also was very, very intelligent. He's the smartest kid in Judea, and that was demonstrated even at the age of 12. This is someone who probably spoke 3 languages, maybe even at that time. They're probably speaking in Greek in the temple, which is not what he grew up speaking at home. Spoke 3 languages. We know that he could read very well. He clearly had studied the scripture. This knowledge wasn't just downloaded to him by his Father in heaven. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like he's Jesus, so he just knows the whole Bible. No. He knew the whole Bible. He was a human being just like us, as we're about to see. He knew the whole Bible because he read it constantly and had huge sections of the Old Testament memorized. As he dies on the cross, he is just automatically reciting Bible verses. That's what he's doing. Stunning. Okay, so first point, Jesus is really, really smart. And don't debate him. It's still not a good idea to debate Jesus. The second point, and well, you should debate him, I guess. It's just that he's gonna do better than you ultimately. The perspective of the preteen Jesus. All right, so let's go through the rest of this story. This is amazing, and his insight for all the moms in the room. We're going to see some insight into Mary, who she is. Okay, I'm actually just going to skip through. This is the first section, but I'm just going to skip straight to sort of my. This is no longer the NIV translation. This is the Pastor Isaac translation of this section. And I've just changed, it's based on the NIV. I like the NIV most of the time. But like I said, there are a few words in this section that are not quite strong enough. They don't get across exactly what's going on, and I don't know why they changed them. Because if you translate them very literally, you get such a better sense of what's happening in this story. So this is the one we already read. Everyone who heard him talking with these teachers in the temple was losing their mind over his understanding and his answers. This kid is insane, man. When his parents saw him, they were astonishingly mad. The NIV just says astonished at this point, but it's very clear in the Greek text that his parents are not just, wow, Jesus, why did you do this? How would you feel, Mom, if your 12-year-old kid ditched you and it took you 3 days to find him? What are you feeling at that moment? His mother said to him in a sweet, soft voice, I'm sure, son, why did you do this to us? That's the literal translation of what she says. Why did you do this to us? This is a mad Jewish mom reprimanding her kid, who is Jesus. And she already knows some of the stuff, right? She was there when the angels, or when the shepherds came in from the field and said, look, we saw heaven open when this kid was born. She was there when the Magi showed up and gave her a huge amount of gold when, Jesus was a 2-year-old baby. I mean, she knows some of this stuff about him. She's still a Jewish mom who's mad at her kid. Your father and I, she says, have been in agony searching for you. This word here, in the NIV, it's translated anxious, but it's the same word that's used in Luke 16 to describe the rich man who is in the torture of hell. Your father and I have been in agony. It's probably a bit of an edgy word, actually. Your father and I have been in agony searching for you. So this part makes sense to us. Okay, we understand this part. This part is, mom and dad are really mad. Mostly mom. And that's true to life, right? Dad's going to be mad too, but he's a little more balanced in this moment. He's not as scared. He's 12, Mary. Come on. He's probably okay. He's in Jerusalem. What's going to happen? Okay. Next, watch what happens with Jesus. Watch this. This is how Jesus responds to this. Why were you searching for me? They haven't seen him for 3 days. And he responds, what do you think? Just initially reading that, do you think Jesus is he lying? Is he pretending something in front of his parents? We know that cannot be the case. And it's clear from the context, this is genuine for him. Jesus' response is to be shocked that his parents are mad. What? Why are you upset? Why were you even looking for me? He thought they would know where he was. He genuinely thought that. Didn't you know that I had to be in my Father's house? Didn't you know, Mom? I'm just at Dad's. Okay. Now, what is going on here? A couple of things we can draw out of this. Number one, Jesus is the Son of God, and he's also, in this story, a regular preteen boy. This is amazing, okay? What's happening here is very much like happens with teenagers all the time. It is well known, and actually there's whole fields of research into this fact, that teenagers, preteens, I guess Jesus is a preteen at this point, teenagers often have trouble, not always, but often have trouble seeing things from any perspective other than their own perspective. Let's nod your head if you know that that's true. The only people in the room who don't know that's true are teenagers. That's the only ones. Okay? It's true, okay? And where do we see it? If I just think about my kids, sorry guys, you're always becoming sermon illustrations. Okay, one of my kids at one point got really, really into the bagpipes. Okay, really into the bagpipes. He was super into them. And so, because he was super into them, he would play them in the house. Because bagpipes are awesome, he loves them, and so it's obvious that everyone loves bagpipes because he does. This is how teenagers are, right? And preteens. If they love something, or they're really into something, it's obvious that everyone loves it. You've seen this pattern repeated again and again, right? I have, imagine I had another kid, maybe this is a real story, maybe I'm making it up, who was really into yo-yoing and just would yo-yo all over the house and swing that thing everywhere and not even think about, because everyone loves yo-yos. It's obvious, because I do. Or maybe if I had a kid who was into scootering, riding around on a scooter, inside the house, because it's obvious scooters are the best thing in the world. This is very common for teenagers, preteens, to only be able to see their own perspective. Now, that's important to see here. Now, what is Jesus' perspective here? What is it? It's that he's at his dad's house. From his perspective, think about Jesus as a teenager not really being able at this moment. Later, he will become the most empathic person in the history of the world, okay? He grows out of this stage. He becomes a person who can sense where another person's perspective intuitively, spiritually. But at this moment, he has no idea what mom's perspective is. His perspective is, I'm at dad's house. So why would mom be looking for me? I'm just at dad's. She should have known I was at dad's. Now, why is that so important? It's so important because we learn something about how this whole thing works, right? Christians didn't make up the fact that Jesus is both a human being and divine. We didn't make this up. People who were with him experienced the reality of it. It's very hard to explain things like the Trinity, but they experienced it over and over again. Here you see part of it. He views the temple as his father's house, and it's very clear here. He is not saying something, he's not saying just, I'm a child of God, or all the Jewish people are children of God. He is viewing the place where the God of the Jewish nation, the God who created the whole world, dwells in the temple of Jerusalem. That's the case in the Old Testament and what everyone believed. And he is viewing that place, it's very clear in the Greek, as my Father's house, the place where my Father lives. Here's something else remarkable. Mary has not told him the Christmas stories. He doesn't know them. He doesn't know about the Magi. Maybe he knows that his family had money from somewhere. He doesn't know about the shepherds and the angels. He doesn't know about Gabriel, the angel, appearing to his mom before he was born. He doesn't know. We know that because Luke tells us. Each of those stories, after it's told, it says, Mary guarded these things in her heart. She didn't tell anybody. Luke's implication is that Mary is she's sharing these stories for the first time right now, as she's sharing them with Luke to share with the world. Jesus doesn't know these stories. Look at Mary's next reaction. Mary and Joseph did not understand what he was saying to them. Maybe I should have retranslated this as well. It's very literally, they are confused and don't understand the words coming out of his mouth. What in the world is he saying right now? So what I want to do with this is, and actually I'm going to have to cut this message almost in half because I talk too much, but there's been a question out there for a long time. Did Jesus really believe that he was the Son of God? Did he really believe that? Or is that just something that Christians and the church later on made up as a kind of legend? Now, we've been over this at Community of Hope Church. We spent a lot of time in the Gospel of John. There is no doubt that the very earliest followers of Jesus 100% believed that he was the Son of God and equal to God from the very first day. Why did they have that idea? Because Jesus himself believed it. And not only that, look at the level to which he believed it. He's not wandering around here going, oh, am I God's son? I'm not really sure. This is something I'm wrestling through. No. He's not even telling anyone about it. It's just one of the basic facts about his life. Just like, you don't debate and stress over who is your mom or who is your dad. That's just one of the facts of life. At 12 years old, probably before he knew he was going to have some huge teaching ministry, probably before he knew he was going to die on the cross, before he knew any of this stuff, it was just a basic part of life that his dad specifically was the God who created the universe. At 12. So where does that leave us? I mean, really where that leaves us is exactly where C.S. Lewis leaves us, or shows us that we've been left by the New Testament. Someone who really believes that, deep down in their bones. He believed it at 12 years old. It was a fact of life, so much so that he's shocked that his mom doesn't know. Don't you know? Joseph's not my dad. God is my dad. Someone who really believes that, really, there's only two options. Either he is mentally ill or it's true. Jesus is not lying here. That's the third option that C.S. Lewis presents us with, that he's just making it up. What would he possibly gain by making this up when he's 12? He's either mentally ill and believes, he's like the people who are in the asylum who believe they're, like a flying pink dragon or something, or it's actually true. That's the position that we're left with. Even at the age of 12, this is what Jesus sees. So instead of going through the rest of the message, I'll just leave you with a question, and you can debate it amongst yourselves this week and see if you can fill in the blanks. In the Bible, we are told repeatedly, and even by Jesus himself, that he committed no sin. Did he sin in this situation? And if he didn't, why not? Why was it not sin? What does this story tell us about the nature of sin? We're going to have to wrap up there. Let's pray, and we'll continue in worship.